Hey people, welcome back to my channel. How are you all doing? I hope you all are good. And welcome back to another episode of Monday Manipulation. Now, what I want to show you is this image of, I call this bleeding snowman. Why do I call that? Because I couldn't come up with any other name, okay? Today I'm going to show you all how I created this image, the process and everything, the difficulty level. Not that difficult, but intermediate. So this is going to be a great video and I hope you all enjoy.
Also, if you like my videos, then please do consider subscribing to my channel to support me. Thank you.
So let's get started. The first thing we are going to do is we are going to create a new document. So press Ctrl N or Command N on a Mac, and I'm using 1080 by 1350. This is an Instagram portrait ratio, 300 resolution, and just press create. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my assets in. So I have all these sky images. I'm going to bring the first one. Actually, I'm going to bring all of them in at the same time. Just drag and drop on your canvas and it will place it right there. All right, and just press enter. Select all of this layer. Now I'm going to hide them all and just going to keep the first one visible. And I'm just going to increase the size of this to somewhere around here. Maybe bring it about here. Okay. And the next one, I'm going to increase the size of this as well. I'm going to hide it and hide this. And yes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this in multiply blending mode. And I'm just going to bring the fill down to 60%. And I'm going to make the third sky image visible. And for the controls, I'm pressing Control or Command T on a Mac to bring up my controls, transform controls. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to select perspective warp. And I'm going to come right here on the top right corner and I'm just going to drag this to the right. I'm going to place this right here. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new mask layer. And I'm just going to, with very soft brush and 20% flow, black as my foreground color, I'm just going to delete these parts, the ground parts that I don't need. I think this is fine. And I'm going to do the same for the below, for the layer below that as well. Maybe 100% flow is much better. Yeah, good. And what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to double click on this layer and I'm going to come to my blend if. I'm just going to blend this together with my background. Okay, then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press Ctrl U or Command U to bring up my hue saturation adjustment layer. And I'm going to set this to colorize and come here and bring it to around blue something or so. And maybe with the plus, let's say, keep it as 220 or 215. I think 215 works better. Yeah, 215. And for the saturation, let's just keep it as 30, positive 30. Maybe 20. Let's just keep it 30. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to unhide the next image. So now I'm going to come to double click on this again, blend if, and I'm going to, I'm going to do the same thing here. I think this is fine. We don't have to worry about the bottom part because we're going to add our foreground here, so don't worry about that. and I'm gonna unhide the fifth one. Actually, I'm gonna, just press Ctrl or Command U on this layer as well, and I'm gonna colorize it exactly the same. 230, 215, sorry, and this was 30. Yeah, this looks cool. Let's keep it as 30. And now I'm gonna unhide the fifth image and transform controls, right click, flip vertical, and I'm just gonna increase the size of this. I'm gonna place it right above here somewhere, and I'm gonna put this in soft light blending mode. And I'm gonna add a hue saturation adjustment to this as well. Same, colorize, 215, 30% saturation is good. And yeah, we are good to go. Okay, so we have our sky set, and the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a gradient adjustment layer, and I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna set this to reflect, and I'm gonna set the angle to 0, and click reverse, and we're good to go. I think we'll set this to 200, and that's all the right amount that we need. All right, so now before doing anything else, I'm just gonna save my document. So press Ctrl S or Command S to save your document so that you don't lose it if anything unfortunate happens. Okay, so now we are all done. So I'm just gonna group all this. Ctrl G or Command G to group them, and I'm gonna rename this sky. And we are all set with our sky for now. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to create my landscape, my mountains. So I'm gonna bring my mountain layer here, and I'm going to increase this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press W to enable to turn on my quick selection tool, this one right here. And I'm just going to create a selection around the mountains, and here we are. And I'm going to just create a mask here, and using my brush tool with small brush size, 100% hardness and 100% flow, black as my foreground color, I'm just going to clean up all these rough edges. And you're all set. I'm just gonna convert this into smart object by right clicking on the layer. So now what we have to do, we have our background sky set and we have our foreground. Now when you see the difference between this, it's a difference of night and day. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna color grade my mountain to give it that night look, that it's set in nighttime. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my brightness, adjust brightness and contrast, and I'm going to clip it to the mask. To clip it, you can either use this, or you can, press Alt and hover between the two layers, or just Command Option G on Mac, Control Alt G on Windows. Now I'm just going to bring the brightness down. I'm going to bring the brightness down. Increase the contrast a little. Let's bring the brightness to -90. I just like staying even. All right. Now another thing, I'm going to come to my adjustments menu, and I'm going to create a new exposure adjustment. Same, clip it, and I'm going to bring the exposure down to, let's keep it -3. And this is good for me. I'm going to create another adjustment layer, curves, and maybe darken. Sorry, we got to clip it there. Maybe darken the whole thing. In RGB, then I'm going to come to this RGB drop down, and I'm going to select blue, and I'm going to increase the blues, and come back to my red, and maybe bring down the reds so that I can get more cyan. And the next thing I want to do is I want to add those highlights from the lightning. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new, actually overall highlights. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add overall highlights right on these mountains. So I'm going to create a new solid color, with a very, dark blue color. Actually, yeah, this is good. This is navyish color kind of thing, royal blue. And I'm going to set this to linear dodge add. And I'm going to clip it to my mountain layer. Let's just call this mountain. All right. And I'm going to double click on my solid color layer, and I'm going to just bring down all this. Yeah. Something like this. Something like this is good. See the difference? Yeah. Yeah, cool. Okay. Now I'm going to create another. I'm just going to duplicate this and just clip it, and maybe a bit darker color, or maybe a bit brighter for the edges. And I'm just gonna invert the mask by pressing Control I or Command I on Mac, and I'm gonna bring up my brush tool by pressing B, and with 0% hardness and maybe 20% flow, white as my foreground color. Just gonna maybe increase my brush size. I'm just gonna paint right on the edges. Okay, I think I like this. Now if you see the difference, you see we have more highlights on the edges. And now that we are done with our foreground, with our mountain, I'm just gonna group them again, Control G, Command G. Let's call this mountain. All right. Now what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna add another mountain right here in our foreground. So I'm gonna come back to my assets folder, and I'm just going to bring up this image. All these images that you're seeing, I have downloaded them from Pexels. These are all completely free stock images from Pexels website. I'll link the website in the description below. You can go in there, you can search your own snow mountain images. There are tons of images. You can, download the image which you prefer, and you can use them for your edits for your images. Just go crazy with that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rasterize my mountain layer. For the next step, the layer has to be rasterized. So now what I'm going to press L on my keyboard, and I'm going to enable the lasso tool, and I'm going to create a very rough selection around these human beings. Okay, I'm going to come here to my edit tab, content ever fill, and as you can see, it's already done a great job. Maybe just delete all these areas here. Yeah, so we are happy with this, and let's just press OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control E or Command E on a Mac to merge them, to merge the two layers. This still will be a rasterized layer. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a very rough selection with my polygon lasso tool, because I don't want the mountain behind that. So I'm just... Alright, so we have our selection. I'm going to create a layer mask now. There goes our selection, and I'm going to convert this into smart object. I'm going to place it right here, and Control T. I'm going to, maybe rotate it a little, maybe use warp to just giving it some shape, and press OK. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add those adjustment layers to give this to get that night color correction, color grading. So I'm just going to duplicate all these adjustments layers here. I'm just going to select them all and press Alt on my keyboard and just duplicate them, drag them up and duplicate them, and I'm going to clip each of them to this layer, but as you see the colors are not that accurate, so we are going to have to fix that. And for that we have to come to our curves first, maybe go to our red, let the blue stay as it is, and maybe come to our red and just maybe increase the cyan. Okay, so we are set with our colors, and I'm going to do this exact same thing like I did, and I'm going to add some these highlights. All right, so we got our colors done and highlights done. Now the main thing, I'm just gonna group them again, call this foreground mountain. Now it's time for the main thing, our snowman. Okay, so let's bring the bad boy in. He's right here. I'm just going to increase the size of it, you know, to see where I'm going to place it. I think maybe a bit. It's good here. Okay. So here we're going to place that, and I'm just going to, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to rasterize this because I have something to do. I want to remove this mouth here, his mouth here, and with content ever fill. So for that I have to rasterize my layer. So I'm just gonna again come back to my free lasso tool. Yeah, cool. And what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to, as you see, we have all these harsh edges that we don't want. We want very solid edges from here. So I'm going to create a mask next to my snowman layer, and with my brush, small size brush, really small, black as my foreground, hardness is 100%, flow 100%. I'm just going to delete, remove, erase all this unwanted roughness. All right, so now that we are all set, we have, we have erased all the unwanted stuff. Maybe just, okay. So now that we have erased all the unwanted stuff, I'm just going to merge all this and convert them into smart object. Let's rename this to Snowman. Believe me, I'm very oriented here. That's only for the sake of the tutorial. Okay, if you see my personal editing files, my personal PSD files, there is no renaming. Everything is just so messy, like my damn bedroom. Now I'm just going to place this right behind these mountains here. Okay, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to duplicate all these adjustments layers, and I'm going to, all right, there we go. All right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add that bleeding mouth right here. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to clip it to the snow layer, and I'm going to rename this to mouth, and I'm going to send the blend mode of this to overlay, and I'm going to come to my colors, select a bright red color, and with my brush, by the way, you see this brush, okay, this is a really cool brush preset. There are like tons of brush presets here from Imad Brush Set. Okay, this guy has literally created every brush type that you ever need for any of your edits, for any of your project. I will link the video in the description below. Go check out the video, see how you can download it and how you can install it. It's completely 100% free. Download the brush set and go crazy with them. I love this brush set. I've been using it for years now. So coming back, let's make the brush smaller, and let's create a mouth here. Yeah, I think this is fine. And let's create another layer. We call this inner mouth. We place it below. And let's set the blending mode of this to multiply. Let's send it actually above. Okay, maybe something dark. Yeah. So with a darker color and setting the blend mode to multiply, we're just gonna create this inner mouth of this, like as if his mouth is kind of open. All right, so let's just, a couple of tabs here, maybe reduce the fill. Yeah, and I'm gonna create another one. Let's name it to inner mouth. Okay, and maybe something more black, more darker. Multiply, smaller brush. Maybe a smaller brush. I'm just gonna create the mouth, this inner mouth here. And maybe reduce the fill of this as well. Yeah, I think that looks creepy already. Cool. And let's bring back our mountains. This looks great already, but we're gonna tweak it a bit more. We're gonna add more elements that is just gonna look insane. Insane to me. I hope you all think it's insane as well. All right, so I'm just gonna create a new layer for the eyes, and I'll just name this eyes. Okay, so with very lighter, select lighter red selected, I'm gonna set the blending mode to multiply, and with the brush I'm just going to, yeah, so now that you see we have spilled some blood on our nose, so we'll just erase this with eraser. Eraser, 100% hardness, 100% flow. I'm just going to, erase the bits here. I think now we are fine. Okay, so I'm actually gonna set the blending mode of this to multiply. I think now we are talking. Okay, so what's next? The bloods, the bleeding part, the dripping part. I love that part. Let's create a new layer, clip it. Let's rename this blood dripping. And yeah, with the same brush, very little size, same percent everything, same color, maybe lighter, multiply blending mode, smaller brush, and let's just create, maybe just line like this, and maybe make a smaller brush again, and just a drip here. Do your research, see how the blood looks, how the dripping works, and work according to that. Draw your shapes according to that. Maybe something bigger here, just go zigzag with it. Cool. All right, so now we have to just remove all the extra parts that we don't need, right, from on the nose that we've got going on. So let's come to our eraser tool and let's just erase all these unwanted bits. So we are almost done. The next thing that we need to add let's just group all this first. Snowman. There we go, snowman. So now that we are mostly done, all we need is, just add those bit of that haze and some, dark shadows to kind of give it that distance feel, and also maybe blur the sky, the mountains, and only focus on our snowman to give it that depth of field look. Okay, so we'll blur them first. Let's come to our sky. Actually, I'm going to convert the sky into a smart object. There we go. Okay, so let's just come to our filter, blur, Gaussian blur. I'm just gonna blur this maybe 4%, or no, actually let's go with 3%. I like 3%. And let's come to our mountain layer, our this background mountain, and let's come back to our Gaussian blur, maybe blur this 5 pixels. Let's actually go with 4. Okay, yeah, 4 is better. And let's come to our foreground mountain, and because this mountain is the closest, and since we are focusing on the subject that's more far away, so we gotta blur this mountain even more. Okay, so let's just come to our effects, Gaussian blur, and let's blur this maybe 6. I think this is good. 6 is fine. Cool. Yeah. Now we need to add those haze stuff, that shadows. So I'm going to create a new layer right above our sky layer. I'm going to name it haze. Yeah. And I'm going to come to my colors, and I'm going to select a bright blue color, blue cyanish color. I'm going to select my brush. I'm going to select the normal soft round brush, maybe increase the size a bunch, 0% hardness, maybe 20% flow, or actually 10% flow is great for this. So yeah, maybe increase my brush even more. Let's come to maybe 800. Yeah, and I'm gonna create that background haze. Maybe create another layer and just, paint all over the background, and set this to a soft light mode. There we go. I think this is much better. And this is our, actually I just noticed one thing. I'm gonna make a shadow right here. So I'm gonna create a new layer right above this color, above our highlights layer. Okay, I'm gonna create a new curves layer. And I'm going to darken this. Okay, and I'm gonna invert the mask, Control I, and with my brush selected, 10% flow, 0% hardness, black, white as my foreground color. I'm just going to tap, a couple of taps here. I think now we are talking. Cool. So let's collapse this, and we have our haze, and we need some haze right in front of our snowman. So let's just come back, 10% brush. Let's create that haze here. Okay, and we need some haze right above our mountain to give it that distance feel. Maybe decrease the opacity of this somewhere around, let's say 60. No, actually let's go with 40. Much better. And let's bring this to 60 as well, the fill. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some darkness right on our foreground. So brush selected, maybe black as my foreground color. Yeah. I'm just going to give it that very intimate, very dramatic feel, dramatic look. That's what I'm looking for. Maybe some right on this mountain as well. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So I think we are mostly done. The next thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some vignette overall, maybe on the sides, actually. So I'm going to create a new gradient layer, adjustment layer, and reflected, reverse, 0. I think 200 is actually good. So if we say this, yeah, it gets more dramatic. Okay. So now next thing I'm going to add a color lookup. So I'm going to come to my adjustment layer, and we're going to come here to color lookup, and I'm going to select the really horror blue. Much better. Maybe I'll decrease the fill to around 80%. That's good. And now I need to add overall color correction. So I'm just going to merge all the layers into a new layer right on the top of everything. So I'm going to press Control Shift Alt E or Command Shift Option E on a Mac, and I'm going to convert this into a smart object, and I'm going to come to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and I'm going to give it some contrast. Maybe some highlights. Yeah, we need those glowing, you know. We don't want to do much with shadows, maybe increase it a tad bit. And I'm going to give it some texture, some clarity, because we need that, and some dehaze to give it, you know, just a very tad bit. Increase the vibrance, maybe decrease the saturation overall. -2. If you see before and after, before, after, it's just adding a lot more character and personality to this. It makes it more dramatic. And I'm going to come to my details menu, and I'm going to sharpen it a little. Maybe reduce noise reduction, above sharpen. If you see, it adds that detail that we want. Cool. And we're going to come to our effects. We don't want any color correction, just come to our effects, maybe add a bit of grain to this, you know, not much, just very, very subtle. Let's go with 15 points. And let's go back. Maybe add just a tad bit of VNet -5 is good. And just come to calibration. Just play around with this, see whichever looks better for you. I'm just gonna come to red primary. Actually, I'm just playing around with this. I have no idea what this does. For all I know, it's just making my image look way better. Yeah, so now if you see before, after, that just made it much better. So let's press OK. And there we go. We are all set. Our image is all ready. So this was it, guys. This was today's video. I really like the output of this. I hope you like it too. Let me know in the comments what you think. And we are done with today's video. So if you like this video, then hit the thumbs up button right down there and subscribe to my channel for more videos. It will mean a lot because you will be supporting me to make even more videos in the future for you all. I hope you really like this, and I hope you learned something new from this. And I'll see you guys next time. So yeah.